Hello and welcome to The Big Picture. After decades of hostility between the United States and its allies and Iran, a deal to check Iran's nuclear efforts, or in more simple terms, to build a bomb, has been struck. It is being hailed as a historic agreement which could change the equations in West Asia and Gulf in particular and world order in general. The deal struck after 13 years of standoffs and 2 years of intense engagement and 20 days of marathon talks. It is expected to bring huge relief to Iran. The US led talks with Iran on one side and Britain, France, Germany, Russia and China on the other. The nuclear rapprochement has already had its effect on the crude oil prices, which has taken a southward turn. However, a few hurdles for the deal is yet to be crossed, especially in the United States of America, where it has to be voted in the Congress. Republicans have termed it a bad deal, even as Israeli Prime Minister has dubbed the deal a stunning historic mistake. Today we will look at the fallout of this historic agreement and its fallout and how it would change the dynamics in West Asia and Gulf as well as internationally, and also how this would affect India. To discuss this, I have with me Vivek Kajju, former ambassador, Bharat Karnad, research professor in National Security Studies at the Center for Policy Research, Shilkant Sharma, former ambassador to International Atomic Energy Agency, Vienna, Professor A.K. Ramakrishnan of Center for West Asian Studies at the JNU, and on the phone line from Washington, D.C. is Chidanand Rajghatta, U.S. correspondent and foreign editor at the Times of India. Welcome to all of you. Mr. Sharma, I would like to come to you first. This entire deal which has been struck, you think this was the best deal which they could have worked out?
I would go a step further, and I would say, after having gone through these annexes, that it is better than the best deal that they could have. The annexes are so exhaustive. They have assured everything which the US fact sheet mentioned on April 2nd, when the outlines were mentioned. They've ensured that Iran's program will be reduced. Its centrifuges will be 90% reduced. Its centrifuges will be reduced by 66%. The total quantity of 3.5% uranium will be reduced to 300 kilograms. The Fordow plant will not be allowed to do any enrichment. Iran will not be able to sneak out because they will block all the avenues. And all this is there in the annexes. So it is not the US fact sheet, but it is the annexes. And Iran has accepted it. And if you listen to President Rouhani on the 14th, he talked about it in philosophical terms, about Iranian pride and in terms of dialogue and patience and forbearance. And his emphasis was on getting the sanctions lifted. And he said that the sanctions were unsuccessful in preventing Iran from developing its capability, but they were effective on the people.
Right.
So that kind of sums up the deal which was there, that they managed to create a capability which allowed Iran to bargain. And the West, in return for that, has lifted sanctions, which might give them $100 billion.
Yes.
So the deal, the text of the deal, it far exceeds anything in the field of non-proliferation done so far.
Done so far. That's very interesting what you said. Let me get Chidanand Rajghatta. Chido, what is the mood there? Everybody is talking about how this deal will go through the Congress. What kind of hurdles will it face there? How will Obama be able to overcome it? What is the mood there?
I think the mood is positive in the administration. They seem fairly confident that they'll be able to get this through Congress, despite this being an election season and the Republicans, expected to take a hard line on this. The point here is that when you discuss, whether it's the best possible deal, I think even President Obama has argued, and there's an extensive interview this morning with Tom Friedman, that you shouldn't let the aspiration for the best be the enemy of something that is good. And I think he's successfully arguing that at least for the next 15 years, this effectively blocks Iran from pursuing attacks towards nuclear weapons. That argument, I think, is finding broad acceptance. Like the ambassador previously mentioned, the annexures suggest that the inspection regime is going to be very, very strict. And then there's always the option, if Iran decides to chunk it, the U.S. and its allies have sufficient time to initiate, severe action, even military action. So, by and large, I think the administration has been able to sell this deal as something that's good. You also have to see it in the larger context. A lot of people are resentful of, particularly Republicans, of this deal because they see it as Obama trying to ensure his legacy. This is the third major country, the third country with which Obama has done something remarkable, turned around 40 or 50 years of entrenched thinking. There was the turnaround with Cuba, turnaround with Myanmar and Iran. So this is truly something phenomenal in terms of ensuring political legacy, and a lot of criticism centers around a very pathological Republican conservative dislike for a Democratic president who's doing all this.
Okay, but you expect him to carry this through the Congress, because the Republicans have reacted violently. They've said it's a very bad deal, and all the words which they could use, they've used.
Yes, they have, and there is a sort of unspoken alliance between hardline Republicans and Israel, the hardline Israelis. But you have to remember that even among Israelis, all this actually boils down to the dynamic, the political and electoral dynamic. What does the Jewish constituency here feel like? And that's not a sort of uniform constituency. That's not a monolithic constituency. There are a lot of liberal Jews who are supporters of the Democratic Party who buy into Obama's argument that this is a good deal. It may not be the best, and that's the argument Benjamin Netanyahu is making. He sounds almost like a U.S. politician or a U.S. congressman. And he's been arguing that it's not the best, that it could have been even better. They could have squeezed, the Iranians even harder. But I think a lot of them buy that, that it is a good deal. Okay,
Mr. Kaju, Mr. Sharma was saying that it's better than the best what one could have thought of. No, but my question is this: why do you think the Iranians agreed to this deal? Was it something that they had no options after it?
Look, the sanctions were biting deep. And what have the Iranians decided? I think on their part, they decided to postpone the development of strategic.
You believe
a strategic option? Yes. I think they've bitten the bullet, and they've decided to postpone that option because this deal is for 15 years. What they did not give up was their right to enrich, even though it's at a very low level.
Very little.
But that is something on which they didn't compromise. The Americans had to move from a maximalist position, which was to deny Iran the right to enrich. And once I think the Americans gave up their maximalist position, and the Iranians decided that a postponement was necessary, then the basic ingredients of diplomacy was available. Before that, there was just no scope for diplomacy. And of course, it's a monumental diplomatic achievement, because this is a terribly complex deal and a very technical one. As Sheila said, that it has required great patience to ensure that legally all avenues and pathways for Iran to develop anything strategic, a strategic option within this 15-year period, would be denied to them. But look, Iran is Iran, and many people who have dealt with Iran would be very wary. And in that light, I think some of the wariness and some of the skepticism which is there in some quarters is not entirely unjustified.
You think it is justified? Mr. Karnan, would you agree with that? Is this a postponement?
As a natural skeptic, I think one thing is very certain, that all that Obama has managed to do is to, in his watch, not have an Iran problem. In other words, you don't have the prospect of Iran going nuclear when he's the president. So he's put it off
much after also.
And he's put it off to another administration in the future when he's in retirement and he wouldn't care, I imagine. So that's the obvious politician's tack to take, that you don't have a problem when you are there at the helm. That said also, the thing is, the skepticism also arises from the fact, I mean, I, along with a few other people, were taken around the nuclear installations in Iran a few years back. I've talked to people there. And one thing is quite certain, that even then, they were about as near to an actual bomb as you could get without tripping over, assuming you believe what they said. Because you saw the wherewithal, but until you talk to the people and, you know, in a sense, gauge what they said. The point, I think, is technologically, I don't think it will be very difficult for them to cross the threshold into weapon status.
Even under this?
No, not under this. Given the fact that, as has been said, the Iranian society from Shah's time is very pro-Western. There are the Bazari element in the you know, bazaars of Tehran and so on, who have always been with the mullahs and the theocrats, the theocracy, and they have been the main pillars, really. So if you take that element out, most of the people want free access to the world for you know, an open trading regime and so on, and they don't want to be you know, constrained in the manner they have been for the last since '79 and Ayatollah Khomeini's coming into Tehran. So that, I think,
so
is
the
the reason
pressure from the people were there.
Well, I think the popular street pressure must have worked on Rouhani and his cohort into saying, well, look, we are nearly there. We haven't given up our weapons option. Our technological capability is not going to be in any sense, you know, hurt, because we'll maintain that level. And 15 years later, if necessary, after we have built up our own resources, built up our stamina and endurance, to, say, perhaps face sanctions in the future, we can then cross the threshold and see what happens.
Mr. Sharma, would you agree with this argument?
Well, you know, Iran, culturally, they are not like North Korea. They would fancy themselves something like Japan or Argentina, where they have capability and respect, and they are engaged into mainstream global trade. So, and Rouhani and Sharif, they are both of that ilk. Sharif has been educated in the West, and Salehi, his energy minister, they are all from MIT, and so these are the guys who want to connect with the West. And you know, Rouhani's memoirs came 2-3 years back, where he has mentioned, it's very interesting, he said that talking to the US is like driving a Mercedes car. Talking to the Europeans or the East Europeans is like driving you know, a Skoda or something. And talking to the non-aligned is like driving a Pacan. Pacan is an Iranian car.
Okay.
So it is the kind of hierarchy which he felt in his mind, that if you wanted to have a deal, you must talk to the Americans, which finally happened.
Okay. Okay, Professor Ramakrishnan. Professor Ramakrishnan, how is this going to change the scene in West Asia and the Gulf countries? How is it now? How will Iran's end of isolation work in these areas?
The most important thing is that Iran's the possibility of Iran asserting itself within the region has increased tremendously. If not immediately, but you know, after some time when the sanctions are lifted, when economic activity with the rest of the world goes on in an increased level, the Saudi skepticism would obviously increase. They are really worried about Iran. Iran's involvement in Iraq, in Syria, in Yemen, and with the Hezbollahs in Lebanon, all that kind of space that Iran has developed over a period of time is going to impact the regional politics in a big manner. And so Iran always wanted that regional status, and this is an opportunity for it to realize that.
Okay. Mr. Kaju, this regional status and, it's enhanced, economically, it's enhanced strength economically and otherwise. How is it expected to use it?
Look, I look at it like this, that the regional order in West Asia, which evolved after the traumatic events and the historic events of 1979, and those events were not limited to Iran only, is now finally coming to an end. It was closing in, but it's now finally concluding. And a new order is going to arise with a more assertive Iran gradually, as the professor has said. I don't think there's something will happen overnight. But there have been signs over the last 2 years how the Iranians have been asserting themselves in the Shia areas of the Middle East. Now, the interesting play will be now between three poles, should we say. One would be the Arab Peninsula, countries where Saudi Arabia, and the second would be the Israelis, and the third would be Iran. The interesting thing is that North Africa, because Egypt was supposed to be the heart of the Arab world, but North Africa is in disarray, and including Egypt, and I don't see that settling down anytime soon. So now we'll really have to wait and watch. There are many imponderable factors.
Absolutely.
But there will be a game in play.
That game in play, Mr. Karnal, let us look at it from India's point of view. How do you look at this deal from India's point of view?
Well, I think in one sense, India lost a very great opportunity to build up a store of goodwill all these years when Iran was a pariah state and so treated by the West and the US. Because, the problem was Delhi very quickly got onto the American bandwagon and the Western bandwagon in trying to isolate and so on. Because whatever rhetoric, the fact of the matter is that we ended up, in a sense, riding the Western coattails as far as Iranian policy was concerned. Think of it, turn the thing around and see if for the last so many years, nearly 2 decades and more, you had looked after your own interests. Why? Because Chabahar and access to Central Asia is very important for us, quite independent of our relations with the United States. Now, here you are. You didn't do all these years, you didn't do anything about Chabahar. You allowed the Chinese to come in a sense, into Gwadar. When we only talked of Chabahar. We should have invested, we should have got our connectivity going to Central Asia and Afghanistan and so on, had everything ready by now. We don't. So, and mainly, we would have built up this goodwill, because when everybody opposed you, is if there are people who side with you, you remember those people more. You have goodwill for them,
Absolutely.
Quite apart from whatever interests you might have in the exigent sense, with however you want to align with powers that be. So this is the problem. I think we had lost a great opportunity, because any way you look at it, Iran becomes rather central to our geopolitics for all of West Asia and west of us.
And also Central Asia.
Well, west, of course, naturally. That's the way to connect to Central Asia.
I know you want to react to it. First, let me get him and then I'll come back to you. Yeah, Mr. Sharma, how do you react to that? The Indian, looking at it from India's point of view.
I would say that we should probably put geostrategy slightly, back, seat behind. The Iranians are great mercantile people. The bazaar is very important. So the openings have been there, and we should try and exploit them to the extent possible. Now, it is a fact of life that once they open to the Western world, you have much bigger competition.
Right.
But that doesn't drive out your advantage, which you would have had for years. So, if you look at the trade with Iran over the last 3-4 years, it peaked at something like $12 billion.
Right. But the concern now is that the increasing competition will reduce that, trade between India and Iran.
we'll buy more oil, because you see the oil prices are coming down, and we always distributed our oil supplies. So if you buy oil from Iran, the trade will automatically go up. And Iran's joining with 500,000 barrels a day will bring down the oil prices.
Oil prices are
So
already coming down.
$1 or $2 has fallen down, but it is good for us. The oil prices coming down is good for us.
But other exports are going to be hurt.
Well, the refined, petroleum, for instance, petroleum refineries, we still export, and that will be good for us because...
Mr. Kajo?
You know, I've always questioned the assumption that despite all the difficulties Iran was in, it was naturally oriented towards us. It was not. Iran had a different outlook. Now, Chabahar, for example, the Iranians themselves, I can assure you, were terribly uncertain about Chabahar because of internal contradictions within Iran itself. What were these? There was, of course, the Bandar Abbas lobby, but more than that, the Iranians are very cautious in allowing Chabahar in the route to Afghanistan develop because of the Sunni tribes who inhabit that area.
No, but what is the point?
The point is that I think through these years, our diplomacy towards Iran has been absolutely fine. And the view that we should have embraced Iran and that we didn't do it because of American pressures, I think is wrong. Why? You had far greater interest in the Arab Peninsula, and you still do. Let's not overlook those facts.
Mr.
You have
Karnadu,
interest in Israel.
We got the point. Would you like to react to that?
Yes, the point is, again, to reiterate what I said, yes, the Iranians now have an option.
Many options.
And you're just a lesser option now.
Right.
And they have no commitment anymore because you didn't do anything for them when they were down. Really, you didn't do anything. No, I know, but that still has a pull. You might say that in everything being equal, all powers have the same kind of options. But the point I think is true. Iran has always been Western oriented, as I said in my first statement. They always have been. But that's it, and they look on themselves as a civilizational power. They as legatees of Persepolis, Darius, Xerxes, and so on and so forth. But the point still is that had we done what we should have done, which is for our own interest, not because we wanted to cultivate Iran,
okay,
we would have been in a better situation.
Professor Ramakrishnan, India, if you look at it from India's point of view, would you agree with what Mr. Karnad is saying, or you think India has played its cards so far with Iran quite well, and we should not have a problem? Professor Ramakrishnan? Okay, I think let me get to Chidanand. Chidanand, now that Obama has this on his hand, how soon do you think that he will be able to clinch this deal, or you think that it can get dragged on much beyond what he expects?
Well, it's certainly going to be a part of this whole, electoral rhetoric. We already have 20 candidates, jostling for position, so there'll be a lot of words flying. But going by the track record in recent times of how he has managed Congress, with healthcare and trade issues, I think there is a sense that the momentum is with them, and they're going to try and swing it. I just wanted to point out that insofar as India's position is concerned, in the interview this morning, Obama cited, the pain that some of the U.S. allies were going through because of the sanctions on Iran as one of the justifications for this deal. He actually mentioned India, South Korea, Japan, among countries which had suffered because of U.S. sanctions on Iranian oil trade. And I think India, did the best of a very difficult situation. If you recall, even during the U.S.-India nuclear deal talks, there were a number of congressmen who actually tried to make India's ties with Iran an issue, a hostage to the deal. And I think there was a particularly difficult passage during which India had to do a delicate balancing act between its buying its oil from Iran and reducing the quantum of oil it was buying from Iran, and then also, trying to keep Washington happy. I think my sense was India did a pretty good balancing job.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Sharma, very quickly.
Yes, my point is that, the extensive sanctions would have not allowed you to even trade with Iran, because all dollar transfers to Iran were blocked.
Yes.
So how would you exchange, And you read the annex on these things, on lifting of sanctions, they will give you an insight into how they are lifting these blockades one by one. So to think that you can have overcome this, even China could not overcome this, despite the Chinese things.
Okay, sir. I think we are completely run out of time, but this is an interesting discussion. We will have to, I'm sure there will be many more discussions when this whole deal will be worked out, when American Congress, approves it. Then we will wait and watch how it will all work out, whether Iran is going to, how Iran will look at India, and what kind of relations will happen in the coming days. Thanks to all my guests. Please keep watching. We'll come back with another issue in the big picture same time tomorrow.